How you doing?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I hope you have a good day.
Hope you have a better week.
I hope your month is full of successful days and a lot of great ventures. I hope you just come up, brother.
I hope your whole fucking year is spectacular.
Oh, you hope my year is spectacular.
Yeah.
You got something you want to say?
You got something?
The start of a pretty big month for genre blockbusters, but it's also a big month for teachers because we got one number on our mind, the number 3, because it's 3 months where we can do whatever we want, whenever we want. We can go outdoors, climbing up mountains, looking for flowers, or joyriding through cities. We can stay in, maybe make a fire mixtape, or play some virtual reality. We can visit some local places, like go to a wrestling match maybe, or watch a play, or go with a couple of friends to see landmarks in the city. Shoot, if you got the time or the money, maybe even see some landmarks abroad. And I know when you go abroad, the craziness of the airport can be a lot, but as long as when you get on that plane, the ride isn't going up and down like an elevator, it's gonna be much better than trying to run the hallways avoiding kids. They're sticking their tongue out at you or their middle finger, making you feel like you're going crazy, wanting to go run through wall after wall after wall, yelling your own name.
I'm the juggernaut!
With that, for Nick, for Chris, for Dante, and for Rose. What up, family? It's your boy Amaru, and we are back with another episode of One Gotta Stay, the show where I give you damn near impossible options, and you only get to pick one to stick around, and everything else is gone forever. I have a very glorious panel here with me today to talk some of our favorite comic book trilogies, and I'm going to go over here to I'm pointing left. You might be looking at me right. I don't know. But one Miss Paige, the Boston Badass for Betty. Paige, my cohort usually on the show. How are you doing today?
Well, I mean, you just made like my life so difficult with this. So changing my list every 5 seconds. But other than that, struggling from deciding on what's got to stay. It's good to be here with everyone, so.
Yeah, she literally texted me, can I change my... No, Paige, it's fine. You can change it. Whatever, it's you.
Oy vey, I guess.
Oy vey all the time. I'm going to go down to this man because he's our resident guy who sleeps in our guest house. He's here every once in a while. If he's not here...
It seems like a 3 month, once every 3 month kind of thing. Once every 3 month kind of thing.
It feels weird when he's not. So one Mr. Matt Thomas, if you've seen the show, you know who he is. He's back. How you feeling?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Just been busy as all hell. Busy Memorial Day weekend. And yeah, just living life, prepping for a wedding, doing reviews, all that fun stuff. So
reliving how the Knicks beat the Cavs. It's the first time I actually got to say something to them in person. So I had to do it. The Knicks lost as well. So we're going to go watch Game 7 after this. But up top, on the other side of Paige, always lovely to have her. So happy for her to be here. It's the machine herself, Jeannine Brice. Jeannine, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. These were really tough picks, but I went for consistency. So hopefully I think I'm happy with my pick. So I'm excited.
I hope you are happy with your picks because I am not happy with some of yours.
Hi, Nick.
Yes, he is. And last but not least, the only person who has not been here before, we were discussing backstage. I've actually never been able to speak to this man. We thought we crossed. We haven't. So I'm very, very glad to see him. If you know the Schmoedown, if you know Settle the Score, because him and Sam have some great battles. I'm hoping we have one today. One Mr. Lon Harris. Whether he's the professor, the delinquent, whatever. We got them all here today. Sir, how do you think you're going to do first time on One Gotta Stay? How you feeling?
Is this a game show? Am I competing? No. How do I think I'm going to do? Oh, now am I nervous? I didn't know. Are there points involved? How does this work? I thought we were just picking movies.
Yes.
How do I?
Yes.
I think I'm going to do great, honestly. It's interesting because I feel like there were the bottom 3. I immediately were like, those are my bottom 3. The top 3, I was immediately like, those are the top 3. Within those 2 groupings, very difficult, very, very difficult. Those groupings not difficult for me at all. But beyond that, very difficult. Once you get in, like what's 1, what's 2, what's 3, I don't know. It's luck of the draw, really.
it's very fun how all these things break down every episode because it usually gets like that. And speaking of the groupings and what we're actually talking about today, is a 3-day weekend. Me as a teacher cannot wait for my 3 months of not seeing those damn kids. So we're gonna talk about the best comic book trilogies of all time, at least in my opinion. And we only get to pick one trilogy. So we got Capt with the first Avenger, Winter Soldier, and Civil War. We got OG X-Men, highly underrated in my opinion. The first X-Men, X2, X-Men United, and The Last Stand. We got both Spideys, Tom Holland's with the Home series, and Raimi Spider-Man. The only one without a weird word. It actually just decided to stick with the numbers. Guardians, of course, Guardians just came out, all 3 volumes. And we couldn't do this without the Dark Knight. I mean, if I didn't have the Dark Knight in here, there was no way it was going to work. But enough of the chit chat. Let's get to it. We're going to start with Cousin.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Cousin, what's your number 4?
You mean 6? Or whatever.
No, 4. You forgot? You forgot? We ain't done 6 in a minute.
Yeah.
4. Come on.
Man, I'm tired, bro. I'm tired. So my number 4. So realistically, the bottom 3 could have, depending on my mood, can go any which way for me, depending on if I'm feeling nostalgic or if I'm going on quality. Surprisingly, when it came to my number 4, I didn't use a Cleveland bias, even though I really could have with it. And for my number 4, I went with the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Yeah.
You know, that's not what you sent me, but you know what? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, number 4. My bad. No,
He's
tired.
real tired because it's the MCU Spidey trilogy. Come on, man. Get it together.
I'm tired, bro. Real quick, I want to blame Chris Anthony Lopez for keeping me up till 4:30 in the morning the other day after our friend's movie premiere. He's why I'm so damn tired. The Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. The MCU Spider-Man trilogy.
Which I don't understand anyway.
I'm sorry.
I don't understand.
I'll be honest. I do not like Far From Home at all. Like, it is one of my least watched MCU movies. I thought it has a very cool villain twist, but outside of Homecoming, every time I watch one of those movies, I like it less and less. So I just realistically have avoided watching those as much as others.
Are you including the Peter Parkers and the less?
Every time I had to see I had to see No Way Home like 6 times in a 4-day stretch. I got tired of that movie quick.
That's your fault. It's not the movie's fault.
No. I had to review it. I had to take, since it was critics only, I had to take my now fiance to it. I had to take my godson to it on a separate day. It was just a lot of people I'd promised to do something with, and none of them could make the same day work. So I did what I had to do to make my friends happy and satisfied in the holiday season.
I was tired of that movie the first time I saw it.
Yeah, one good movie does not make a good trilogy. I'm sorry.
Yes.
The first 2 movies are kind of forgettable and kind of blurred together. Without that third movie, it's not a strong trilogy.
I don't feel like that third movie is a real movie. That third movie is like
it doesn't feel real. I agree.
It's 98% references.
Yes,
and then
it is.
We've gingerly sprinkled a new story on top of the references. It's like
exactly.
It's like when you go get like ice cream and they're like, it's like spicy ice cream because they put a little bit of like chili powder right on the top. That's what it is. So at first you're like, ooh, there's an interesting flavor. Then you get to it like, no, this is literally just lines of dialogue from old movies that they're repurposing to give me like a jolt in the movie theater.
It felt like a bowl of member berries. Remember how you like this?
Nothing like this has ever been done or attempted before, so I feel like that in and of itself makes that movie really special.
But it had Days of Futures Past. You could argue did that.
I agree too, and Spider-Verse I think is the better version of that kind of story. Like, let's merge together a bunch of different Spider-Man worlds and realities, but it's a story about Miles Morales. He's got motivation. He's got a world of his own that makes sense. He's got, things that he's working through during the course of the story. Whereas, I don't know, that one for me feels more like it's mostly references and then a little bit of a story.
I'm sorry, but it's the one Spider-Verse is Spider-Verse. It's the best Spider-Man ever.
Yeah.
But secondly,
Totally agree.
Right, it's a better
We
take
did
on this
articles
material.
for Bitesize, and I
It
know
is-
we wrote that, and I wrote about Spider-Man too. So I can't we
It's-
definitely have our preferences on the better Spider-Man.
Look, I don't disagree too much about Far From Home. I like all three. I think Homecoming is great, but this whole concept that No Way Home is not a story. It is the story. It is the Spider-Man story. I love it to death. But whatever.
No Way
Sure.
Home. No Way Home is literally a story we saw in the other two Spider-Man trilogies, or not. The second one's not trilogy.
I'm with
the
Jeannine on
duology.
this one. The first two, Homecoming and Far From Home, I feel like are very jumbled together, and I feel like I can't even tell them apart really. I feel
Far
like they're
From Home,
not
I agree. That's
as
why I don't like
solid
it.
as the third film, which
See,
this has sprinkle of fan service in it, which makes it so great in a sense.
Sprinkle?
Okay, well,
Sprinkle.
yeah. Dumpage of it.
Serves
but-
a purpose. It
But
serves
hey, so
a purpose.
I mean, Homecoming already had that sloppy start with the weird how many years since whatever. That already
no, that was Far From
set the
That was
tone.
Far From Home. That was sloppy.
I think all three of the MCU Spider-Mans, there's at least one element of all the movies that I think you could point to is that was a good element. That's a good understanding of
Yeah.
Spider-Man. Michael Keaton in Homecoming
Yes.
is terrific.
Mhm.
And Jake Gyllenhaal in Far From Home, I think
So
is really
fun.
good.
Yes.
And I like in Far From Home that it generally has a comedy road trip vibe. The whole movie kind of feels like it's in more of a teen comedy mode, and I dig that about it. There's a lot of things I don't like about it, but
So
then
here-
that third one, there are it's fun to get Molina back in there. It's fun to see all of these characters and these beats and revisit some of the beats. But it wears out its welcome, I think, very quickly. And I don't think any of those three movies I could point to as that's a great Spider-Man movie on the level of some of the other ones maybe we'll talk about.
Yes, and my thing is the reason I like Homecoming so much is because that was the Peter Parker I'd been looking for throughout all. Because I've always been a fan of the high school Peter Parker. That's why Homecoming to me is so memorable, and that's probably out of the trilogy my favorite one. Now looking at it, it probably goes Homecoming, No Way Home, Far From Home, because I really did not care for Far From Home at all.
Well, anyway, we're going to keep that moving. I'm going to try to save Tom Holland from this shellacking he's getting, and somebody else is going to get a shellacking. Lon, sir, what is your number 4?
I went with the Captain America trilogy for my number 4. I know. People get mad at me. I will say this. I'm a big fan of First Avenger. I like First Avenger, I think, more than most people. I like Winter Soldier.
I'm
I would say
right
I like
up there with you.
I would say I like Winter Soldier about as much as most people. What we're really talking about here is I'm not a Civil War. I'm not a Civil War fan. I think what this comes down to is when I see these movies, I did not grow up reading Marvel comics. I was a DC Comics kid. I knew the X-Men from their cartoon. I knew Spider-Man from his cartoon. I did not read comic books. So when you're doing the dump out the toy box, what if Hawkeye fought Black Panther? this means nothing to me. I'm seeing these movies and I'm experiencing these moments in these characters for the first time, for the most part, unless they were an X-Man or a Spider-Man. And that stuff is just lost on me when it's not linked up to the story, when it doesn't feel like it's compelling on its own merits. And I got to tell you, if you didn't grow up with those characters, that airport tarmac where they all fling stuff at each other, it's really boring. It's a boring sequence. Nobody really gets to do it. It's literally just, I have always wanted to see these 20 colors knock into each other, and there they are knocking into each other. I know nobody agrees with me. Everybody, that Civil War scene was like everything they'd ever wanted from a movie. I like when stories work on their own internal logic, and it isn't just remember when you were 8 years old and you really wanted to see purple guy shoot blasters at blue guy.
So
Matt,
Lon,
Go ahead.
Lon, I slightly agree with you in when it comes to the
Nobody
fight.
agrees. Yeah, it's okay.
No, slightly. I don't completely agree with you, and you'll find out why later. But it's funny enough, this is part of the reason Chris and I were up till 4:30 in the morning. I was telling him about coming on this show, and he wanted to smackaroo when he heard the list. But we were talking about our love-hate relationship with Civil War, because that's a movie that, depending on my mood, I'm either loving it or I'm kind of with you. Like I didn't. The thing I like about the first two Captain America movies is that they are very much, for the most part, self-contained stories. They are their own.
Civil War. Oh my god.
No, Civil War is Avengers 2.5.
Yeah, Civil War is not a self-contained story at all. It's 100% like we got to get these guys in. We got to make it's a
we
hub
need to
movie.
set this up for the two finals Avengers movies. That is what Civil
See,
War
I
is.
think that's the best one out of the whole trilogy is Civil War. That's just my take now.
I don't think Zemo's journey is interesting and often doesn't make sense. Like Zemo's plan doesn't actually hold together in any meaningful way. And I think that so much of that movie feels like what it is, which is franchise world building, and like it's that homeroom organizing. Like, okay, we got a few, like at the meeting, when the meeting begins, they're like, all right, before we get into the real stuff, we got a few bits of business we got to take care of up front. That's Civil War. It's like, well, we got a few bits of business here, MCU business, we'll deal with that, and then maybe we'll get to a story about, you know, Tony Stark being mad about his parents decades ago. It's all loose. It's really just about getting those characters together, fighting on a big asphalt.
But it's a superhero movie,
It
so it's
doesn't matter.
jam-packed with superheroes, and there's great
But
story
it's a
moments
Captain
and story
America movie. It's supposed to be
It's
like
not,
the best
and
thing
it's
that movie
not.
did was give us T'Challa. That's the best thing that
Right.
movie did.
Well, that's what I mean. Like that.
And
that movie
I think
is
it
like,
had some of the best superhero action in all of the MCU. I mean, you had that great Bucky chase, you had the airport, you
but
had
I'm
the
looking for a
Iron Man,
Captain
Cap, and
America
Bucky
movie.
fight.
But
at
those
the
scenes
end.
those scenes are memorable because of the characters that are involved, and it's this epic. We've been watching 10 movies, and now Iron Man and Captain America are fighting.
You
As
just
an
said
action
that you
sequence,
didn't care about the characters involved.
I don't, because all right, and
Now
that's what
you
I mean.
think
Like,
that's what makes
But
them
he's
good.
he's
So-
saying for the
I'm
general
saying-
audience, that's why.
I'm saying if you watch that as an action sequence and not as the climactic moment in this story you've been watching over the course of 10 films, if you just watch it as these two guys fighting, it's a mediocre action sequence because the Russos really aren't that good. The best sequence they put together
hold
is
on.
Captain America in the elevator in Winter Soldier, and that was their stunt coordinator. That was Sam
Hold on.
Hargrave.
You do not
Sam
get
Hargrave
to.
is great.
I'm standing up for Cleveland right now. You do not get to slander my Russo brothers,
Oh
even
my
though I
God,
hated
Sam
Cherry
Hargrave.
and I
They
hated
are
Gray Man.
Terrible.
They
Grayman is
haven't-
terrible.
they
Grayman is
haven't
like,
been
I
what
said
if,
I hated Gray Man.
what if we did
They
an
haven't
action
been good
scene?
since Endgame. They
Because
kind
they're
of
not.
I'm
They're not good. In the
I'm not
MCU
disagreeing with that,
in
but
the
I'm not going
MCU
to allow
they've got-
the Russo slanders to stand.
in the MCU
Citadel is
they've
a
got-
mediocre as fuck show too.
They've got
Sorry for my
dozens of
language.
people in the MCU watching over their shoulder to make sure they don't mess up. And every time we've seen them without that safety net, we get Cherry or the Gray Man or maybe a pretty good episode of Community, because they're not real filmmakers. They're doing workman-like stuff. They don't really know what they're doing. They're not visual filmmakers at all. These movies are not visually interesting. And when they're good, it's because the other people are like pulling the movies on their back. And I
will
really
not
think that
stand
comes
for the
I
Cleveland
clear-
slander.
With
becomes
something
clear in
like
Civil War.
Spider-Man, all those movies feel the same. But with this, every movie is like a
those
different
feel
genre.
different.
Like the first film, you get a wartime movie. The second film, you get your espionage thriller. And then this movie, you get your big bombastic superhero action movie.
I agree
And
with
I
that.
think
And
there's a great build. Like
Yes.
it's quieter, and then it gets, more amped up, and then completely amped up for the third one. And that's what a good trilogy, I think, should do.
Lon, I'll give you the one thing that I'll give you that is a little bit coincidental is how he got them two to get together at the end. Zemo, I give you that. Where
None
it
of
was
it.
like, wait a second, how did they line up?
A lot
and get
had
there?
to work.
Yeah.
I
A lot had to
can
work.
pull up. I can pull up my notes. We did this when we did the Honest trailer. I actually went and broke down everything Zemo would have needed to do to build this up, and
It's a lot.
A lot.
trust me,
Yeah.
it's
He got lucky.
ludicrous. I don't want
It's a
to
lot.
bring down your entire
It's a lot.
podcast with it, but
It's a lot, but we'll keep it moving. Paige, what about you? What do you have? And I've never asked because nobody has Holland at number 4, and hell no, nobody else has Captain America number 4. So Paige, what's yours?
Dude, mine is the X-Men. X-Men for life, man. And yes, I kind of wish it was higher, but that last film really does a damper on it for the trilogy for me. But I mean, the first time I ever saw X-Men, like X1, X-Men, and then X2 Unite. Is it? No, that's the
X2, X-Men United.
X2, X-Men
It was
United.
United X3 is last
Stand,
stand.
yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, when I saw that, I was like, I used to like clench my fist really hard and just like hope that like fucking metal claws would like come out, or like since I wear glasses, I was like, maybe I can like shoot like laser beams out of my eyes. Like that movie like made me actually really appreciate like superhero films because I loved like the mutant aspect, and it felt like such a real draw to wow, like could the world actually like be like this? Like I know Santa Claus isn't real, but maybe like Cyclops or like Professor X is. Like I feel like this could be possible.
I feel like it had the first movie had the opposite problem of Civil War, where I do agree that Captain America does kind of get lost in the shuffle. Whereas X-Men is supposed to be about the X-Men, but it's mostly focused on Wolverine. As somebody, X-Men is my favorite of comic book characters. And the fact that they kind of just focus on Wolverine and not the X-Men as a whole. And
so much.
He got more time than anyone else. Like I want to see all of these characters get something to do, but it was mostly like Wolverine's movie.
We don't know why. He's always been the most popular X-Men character. So you got to have a hook, and when you get Hugh Jackman,
I guess, and then call it Wolverine: the X-Men. Don't call it an X-Men movie and then make all about one character.
They tried that, and then most of those movies suck.
I feel like this, especially in The Last Stand, comes into play where I get what you're saying. I think for the first movie that makes a lot of sense, and you want to pick your one or two marquee characters, and it's from their perspective, and that's how we get people into this larger world of the X-Mansion and whatever. By the third movie, though, they really should be opening it up more, and I still feel like we feel kind of locked into that. Hugh Jackman is the star.
100%.
Yeah.
And especially when you're trying to do stuff like, Dark Phoenix or whatever, like you've got to open up the
sloppy. That was handled so poorly. Oh my gosh.
I'm just gonna let Jeannine talk for me because all of her points that she's been bringing up, I'm like, holy shit, I agree with every single one of these. Like this is why I chose this.
I'll say this. I always feel like the original X-Men is extremely underrated outside of Blade, which I'll tell you this. It was between OG X-Men and Blade, which would get that sixth spot. But
Blade
both The Last Stand and Trinity.
Not mine, baby.
Trinity hurts it as much, so it was between those two. But I think Blade and X-Men are the movies that
might have had
everything open.
I might have had Blade sneaking into that top three. I don't know. It would have been touch and go. It would have been touch and go.
I don't blame you. I tell you that.
It was because of the shirtless Ryan Reynolds. That's why.
Yeah. For me, X-Men is very underrated, and X2 is my favorite.
So good,
of all X-Men films.
X2 has an argument of being one of the greatest comic book films of all time. I will say that right now.
And when you're talking about when we isolate like a great action sequence from one of these movies, I think X2, that opening Nightcrawler White House invasion, because it's not just good. It's beautifully shot. It's beautifully edited. It's just a great sequence. But it's also a new way of seeing superhero powers on screen. We'd never seen that like Bamf going from one room to the other. And the way Singer, not that I want to praise Brian Singer.
Don't do that here, guys.
The guy who shot it. Like the way that he moves so beautifully through walls and through geography. And it's really giving you a sense of how Nightcrawler.
And the slow-mo points.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So good.
That's what I'm looking for at the pinnacle, I think, of these movies. When you can give me a moment like that makes me rethink about how this character moves through the world. I think that's really cool.
I will say, when Roos sent me the gifts of what the movies were, he just sent me a gift from X-Men Origins. I'm like, are we doing the first X-Men trilogy, the second X-Men trilogy, or are we doing Wolverine? You got to clear this up because the answer would have been different for every single one. But X2, I think the X-Men series has two films you could argue are possibly in the greatest comic book series of all time. Conversation with X2 and Days of Future Past, because Days of Future Past is his own beast. But like the one thing that always will hurt the X-Men, no matter what trilogy you're going in, is the lack of continuity they keep within every film.
And Dark Phoenix. Anytime we try to go to Dark Phoenix.
Well, no. But my point is they have such a lack of continuity going film to film. It could be a sequel.
Yeah, it's not.
Reuse this character and with the
they also.
I was so sad when Alan Cumming did not come back. I was like, why?
No,
Where's
he hated the makeup. He did not want to deal with
he said
that.
he didn't want to do
was like
that.
his biggest thing. Yeah.
It feels like they always want it to be every new X-Men movie is their team is broken up and we got to get them back together, or the team is together but they're going to break up in the first act and then come back together by the end or something. And it's like you don't always have to be there's no X-Men during the, but like it could just be an X-Men adventure and they're together as a team the whole time.
See, and that's what I wish we got more of. Like I don't read comic books, but like I feel like there's so much probably lore within the X-Men like comic books that like they could have like
there's so much they could have picked from.
So much they picked up instead of being so repetitive. I felt like kind of through all of the
I was not happy with that version of Rogue. Like
I don't think anyone was.
And then by the third movie, she wants to give up her powers. Like, ugh. And then they kill everybody.
Yeah.
Like
and the way they kill all those
everybody. Yes, like I love stakes, but the way they went about it, Oh, they
horrible.
did. They did Scott so dirty. In that
they did Scott dirty that entire trilogy.
Yes, he's the leader of the X-Men, and he got so sidelined.
Yeah, I love James Madsen. Marsden. Sorry.
Always Mr. gets his girl stolen and everything.
Yes.
Not Enchanted. Not Enchanted.
Also great.
No, he got his girl stolen, but he got a new girl.
Exactly. That's why it's a wash. We don't count Enchanted.
No, he really does get all of his girls stolen, and he gets the limelight taken away from fucking Wolverine in every single one of those.
Everybody does. Yeah. But if you saw Dark Phoenix, the most recent one, it's a bad movie. Nobody's arguing that. But the opening,
it's horrible.
It's a terrible movie. But the opening like 6 minutes is like they're at the X Mansion and Professor X gets a phone call and it's like it's the president. There's a problem in space and they get in the rocket and they go to space. It's like a 6-minute opening just to get them into space so that she can get infected by whatever the
have Jennifer Lawrence fulfill her obligation.
Right. But that sequence is so cool, and it's like this is how every X-Men movie should start. They should just be a team. The president calls. We got to go on a mission, and then something happens on that mission, and now we're on a movie. Like, why is that so hard? I feel like we've never seen that, and that's what the X-Men are. That should be every X-Men movie.
Like, how many? Hold on, I'm sorry, this is kind of off topic, but how many X-Men movies are there in total?
A lot.
Seven of the 7 actual movies that are X-Men movies, 3 Wolverine offshoots, and 2 about to be 3 Deadpool films.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much. Yeah.
Correct.
Jeannine, I'll tell you this: X-Men is not my number 4. Is X-Men your number 4?
No.
No. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna spare you and go to my number 4. Okay. We'll see because you're the last one. We'll see if you agree with me or not.
You guys are gonna kill me.
Not if they kill me first. Dark Knight's out.
What
Goodbye,
the
Dark Knight.
fuck?
No, I'm not gonna lie. I bet like that I had a heart. There was a way I did my thinking, and that if I didn't do my thinking a certain way, I would agree with you.
Here's the deal with Dark Knight.
I'm gonna say why he chose it, guys, because he is not a DC comic fan. He's all about the.
That's a lie.
I am a DC comic fan. I've always liked Marvel more, but the big reason is here's the deal: Dark Knight is up there. But I tell you this now, it is not my favorite comic book movie of all time. There are a couple of ones that are above that. I think Dark Knight Rises is way overhated, but it's not great. And Batman Begins is fine.
No, I disagree.
I kind
Batman Begins is the best film in that trilogy.
It's all just fine.
No,
fine.
It is,
the fact that Ken Watanabe is not Ra's al Ghul. I'm sorry. What are y'all doing? You have Ken Watanabe. Why would you put the Neesums as Ra's? Dude, come on.
Hold on, bro.
Yes, really. Look, best performance in almost any movie is Heath Ledger. And I don't go by that theory that The Dark Knight is a Joker movie. The Dark Knight is an amazing top tier movie with an amazing top tier performance. Again, this is kind of a victim of circumstance where if I just lined up movies, it just ended up lining up at number 4 for me. It does. So this kind of is where it is for me. It's a hard of 1 through 4, and this just happened to land at 4 because my other 3 favorite movies top The Dark Knight. So,
Rue, I'm gonna give you. I somewhat agree with you. If I wasn't basing this off of quality of films, my list would have been different. But I'll say this. This is way higher for me. But I will also say this. In the Dark Knight trilogy, there's only one Batman film, and that's Batman Begins. The rest of them are just action films. It is the furthest thing from Batman. I don't think they're good comic book movies at all. I'm dead ass serious. I like Heath Ledger's Joker, but otherwise they're just good films that just happen to be a character who's named Batman. But growing up as big of a Batman fan as I have, I've told people before, my favorite movie of all time is actually the 2022 Batman, because that felt like I was watching a live action adaptation of Batman the Animated Series, which was my definitive Batman growing up. And Christian Bale never even touched anywhere near that. Chris Nolan's take on Batman never touches anywhere near that. So I can understand why, from a different point of view, why you'd put this so low.
Well,
I saw that comment pop up, by the way. The Joker's plan, very convoluted and silly, but it does not handle. It does not even approach the ridiculousness of Zemo's plan. I'm copping to that the Joker's plan is silly in this. But,
yes.
And because I think the Joker's plan in this directly was influenced by it was that Skyfall era, or Skyfall was influenced by the Joker, but everybody was trying to do that, the heroes got an elaborate 18-stage plan to outwit and Skyfall also has an incredibly stupid one. Nobody ever pulled that off and came up with an actually elegant master plan. They're always dumb on some level.
Jeannine, are you here with me, or do you got something else?
I am right here with you. Dark Knight is my number 4 as well. Everything you said, I agree with. Again, my kind of whole process for this was one good movie does not make a whole trilogy great. And I like that they did this real world thing with Batman and made it feel like this was a real place, that Gotham was a real city. But yeah, Batman Begins is just fine. I did not care for Katie Holmes in the movie. She was not great. And the final film didn't really hit as hard as it should have for the final film in a trilogy. So yeah, everything you said, spot on for how I feel about.
You guys are on crack. This is probably, I think, one of the best I don't want to say adaptation, but kind of adaptation, because
it's the furthest thing from a good adaptation. Hold on.
No, because it doesn't feel like it.
No.
Takes the name of Batman.
It is the furthest thing from an actual Batman adaptation. It is the furthest thing from a Batman adaptation.
I've read Batman comics my whole life. It's perfectly like a Batman adaptation. I don't know. The third movie, I don't love how Nolan in the third movie wants to make it so definitively like a closing chapter. It feels premature, even if you want to bail after 3. I don't think
that Robin line makes me cringe.
I don't like the Robin stuff, and I don't like how all of a sudden it's old man Bruce Wayne. I think it sort of touches on what I was saying for the X-Men. There could be so many movies where they're just at the height of their superheroing career.
Yeah,
filmmakers always want to come
duty.
in.
Yeah,
filmmakers always feel like they want to come in and make it it's the first adventure or it's the last adventure, because that makes it stakes and climax and and it's you don't have to do that. So I think that was kind of an error, just overarching with Dark Knight Rises. But I think once you get past that and he's got to come back and he's crippled at the beginning and remember how to be Batman. Once you get that stuff out of the way, I think it works pretty well as a Batman movie. And I really like the Bane Batman. I like that rivalry and that sequence. And I think Tom Hardy's great and all of that stuff works really well.
True. But we're gonna keep it moving. And real quick before we do that, we'll just have a quick recap of everybody's numbers 4s. Me and Jeannine both have Dark Knight at number 4. Lon is doing something. He has Capt at number 4. Paige is X-Men, and Matt has Tom Holland, the MCU Spider-Man, as his number 4. Don't forget, everybody, we do have 5s and 6s. If you're gonna yell at people, wait a little bit. But before we do that, Jeannine, we're gonna go over to your number 3. What is your number 3?
My number 3 was purely based on nostalgia, and I went with the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I am somebody who is in love with that early era of superhero movies. It was so new and fresh, and I grew up, watching those cartoons and reading comics with my brother. So yeah, seeing even stuff like Daredevil and stuff for the first time was just really exciting to see that they were actually trying to bring these characters to life. So that's why I absolutely loved the Raimi Spider-Man movies. They were so fun. It was great getting to see the character in action, solid villains throughout. The third film, yes, it was pretty ridiculous, but I mean, overall, I think as a trilogy, I think it works. All three films do something different or try to do something different. And yeah, I really enjoy that trilogy. So
MJ is a horrible human being.
Yes.
Absolutely ridiculous. But with that, does anybody else also have the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy at number 3? Both Lon and Paige. Both Lon and Paige. Go on ahead, y'all.
You want to take it, Lon? I'll take it.
Sure.
Why not? I mean, it's kind of exactly. I'm just gonna keep saying what Jeannine says. Like, I love. Like, to me, like, it was really hard to make this list because this being at number 3, I still think is like incredible out of these 6 because these are all like amazing like trilogies in their own sense. And for me, it was just the third one that really knocked it off from not being in the 1 or 2 spot for me. But because that third one does get a little bit cringy, that the evil Spider-Man, oh my god, when he has the symbiote.
Emo Spider-Man.
Emo Spider-Man is the worst thing I've ever
See,
witnessed.
I'm at a point where I can have fun with those really ridiculous moments, and especially kind of knowing Raimi's style and also just feeling bad that, like, you know, they kind of messed with his plans a little bit. I have fun with it now. Like, I can laugh at that and just enjoy it.
I laugh at it, but I also cringe at it.
Another shout out
I'm not supposed to laugh at it is the issue, and I do. But
another shout out to Spider-Verse making it better.
Yeah,
redemption.
Yeah. But to me, Spider-Man 2 is, to me personally, is the greatest comic book movie ever.
It has an argument.
It's up
many
there.
of the films within these two.
The balance of the lightheartedness with the dark themes are like balanced so well that it just like it feels like it's taken right out of like a comic book strip in a sense. And I just like the themes in that and like the struggle of like what it means to be Spider-Man, like, is why I love those films so much. And like number 2, like, sticks with me so hard. That third one is what knocks it down like such a huge like layer in this. But
I'll just make this quick. Spider-Man 2 is overrated.
I'm Roma.
This dude drank way too much Dr. Pepper before he came on the show.
All right.
I feel like Raimi's style is such a good fit for a comic book sort of world.
And I didn't expect that either. So when it worked, I was really excited.
Yes,
yeah. Like,
I never thought that. Yeah.
Right, and we were just talking about Nolan, who I think Nolan is doing that. I'm going to take a comic book world and I'm going to like make it a Nolan world. Like he takes Batman and he resets it aesthetically, not necessarily.
I'm going to make it super pretentious,
but visually, it's like I'm going to make this like this is going to look more like Inception than a DC comic come to life. And
he didn't do that with Batman Begins, though. Batman Begins looks like a Batman movie. Let's be honest.
But I think but he's bringing his own cinematic sensibility to the material, and he's adapting it into a movie. Whereas I think what Raimi's doing is it's much more like, how can I make a movie look as much like a page of a comic book as possible? Like saturated colors, you know, impressionistic sort of camera stuff, moving everything around really fast, like that kind of crazy editing. And I think that it works so well. And it's weird that Nolan became like, everybody tried to do what Nolan did. Like I think so many comic book movies now are trying to take this material from the comic book and how do we like reinvent it cinematically in a way that feels original on screen. And it's surprising in some ways almost that more people don't go back to what Raimi did and like, how do I make this movie look as much like, I feel like Punisher Warzone, Lexi Alexander kind of does this too. Like, how do I make this movie aesthetically look like a Punisher comic? Like, oh, everybody's heads should explode. It should be really juicy and bloody and gruesome. Like that kind of stuff. I really like that kind of stuff. And I think Raimi nails it as well as anybody ever did.
Which is funny because I don't like the Evil Dead film. So I was very like, I mean, obviously I was young when these movies came out, but like seeing the Evil Dead films and then I was like, wow,
that's
such
the same
a big
guy. Yeah,
like you would not have expected that. But he still has like his like hand in the pot with it. Cause like you could definitely tell like some of the references like of how he like does his filmmaking that like you can see it a little bit in the Spider-Man movies, which I actually appreciate because like you said, he does something different. And
Yeah, I mean, I think you could tell like the guy who did Darkman also made these like actual comic book movies.
Yeah, that
and,
felt like comic books felt very pulpy and very quick paced. That first film definitely feels that way.
I dig that.
All right. Matt, we're gonna go back to you, sir. What is your number 3?
I might get some hate for this. Guardians of the Galaxy is my number 3.
I'm not filled with hate about that.
I just meant for people who might watch this. The first film, very good. Still essentially just an Avengers remake with characters most people don't know. It is. Okay, it is almost the exact same plot as the first Avengers. Yes.
Cool.
I mean, they're all like, we gotta get this thing that's gonna save the planet from the beam. Like they're all kind of like.
They all are. The whole point of that whole fucking Infinity Saga.
They're all 80%.
So yeah.
Wait. Lackey of Thanos is the main villain. Just an Infinity Stone is the MacGuffin. That's what it is. Both films.
But I mean,
and then
that's not a bad thing.
Band of misfits have to band together and to make, and they've never worked together. Not every.
When are they not a band of misfits?
But you're going on to volume 2 now.
Yes. Okay. Volume 2 is one of my least favorite MCU movies. I have it ranked like number 2, right behind Thor: Dark World as my least favorite. It is literally you get a joke, you get a joke, you get a joke, you get a joke. Everybody gets jokes.
I'm not the biggest fan. Like, to me, the Guardians of the Galaxy, like Volume 1, is my favorite MCU film. But like Volume 2 is very like low on my list.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the weakest of the 3. But I do like that with all the jokiness, we were still able to get some really deep emotional beats by the end of the movie.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Because I felt that they were all essentially undercut by jokes, which is part of the reason I hate it so much. And then 3 is definitively my favorite Guardians movie. Like that was one of the best James Gunn movies I have ever seen. Like that 3 alone boosted this to my 3rd ranking, because realistically, if it weren't for Guardians 3, this would probably be in the 5 or 6 range.
But I think it doesn't have a bad movie. I think all 3 movies are good.
Yes,
the first one's great for introducing brand new characters we had no idea about and making us really love them. And then that 3rd film just kind of closing it out really well with great character development and really strong moments. The entire time, like I did in the theater. So in terms of consistency, I think it's pretty strong.
Yeah, I rewatched number 2. Go ahead. I was just saying, I rewatched number 2, and it is one of my lowest MCU films, but there's not many. There's only one MCU film I don't like, and that's Love and Thunder. So I like this film. I do think it's overly jokey. But the second time I saw it, unlike you with Spidey, every time I see Volume 2, I like it more. I see the emotional bits.
Volume 2 happens the same with the Spidey film. I like Volume 2 less and less.
I still don't like the jokiness of it all, but the rocket of it all.
The
soundtrack, guys.
The soundtrack shouldn't make or break a movie.
I know, but it's the soundtracks are so iconic that it boosts.
And those soundtracks are curated to enhance the story.
The way he integrates Brandy, it's not just that he plays that Brandy song, but the way he actually like integrates it into the movie is really thoughtful and clever. And like,
he thinks about the music.
Right. Kurt Russell like references the song in like it really,
it's not just needle drops.
Exactly. And that's what I think is so strong about what Gunn does. Taking a big step back and looking at it as a whole trilogy, is it really does feel like he's thought about these characters and their backstory and their emotional lifelines, and he's coming up with ways to sort of challenge them and push these stories outside of the sort of comfortable, familiar MCU box. I also think aesthetically, his are some of the only MCU films, especially now, that don't feel like they're just filmed in a big blue room in Glendale. Like
I agree with that 100%.
Like even 2, which I agree with you all, is the weakest of the 3. There's like depth to a lot of those scenes. It feels tactile and there's texture in ways that, like Love and Thunder, great example, I don't feel it. It just feels like everybody's standing around and Tyke is like, behind you, there's a face, turn around, you're gonna see a face.
And another thing with this trilogy too is that it kind of like the trilogy feels like its own standalone. Like it doesn't have to reference. You don't need all these other MCU characters within
Yeah,
those films,
it was able
which
to
I
do its own
appreciate so
thing.
much more because all the other MCU like trilogies. I mean, I guess Spider-Man does because Iron Man is such a big part to him because that's like his Uncle Ben. Like I like that these
those
movies just rely on each other,
super
like,
connected to the
misfit
bigger picture of the MCU as opposed to kind of
Ex-
being its own self-contained thing, which Guardians was able to
exactly,
do. Yeah.
which is nice because in a world now when there's like 30 plus movies in the MCU, it's nice to be able to get these movies and you can watch
Yeah.
them. And I mean, you can't, yes, you have to see like Endgame and Infinity War to kind of like get it just, but other than that, you really don't have to see the other films to understand what's going on at this point in the MCU.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I rewatched Guardians 3 yesterday, and it's probably one of the only MCU movies I've seen them all multiple times. And even though I knew it was coming, my eyes were like, hey, shush, stop it, fucking Rocket, man.
Yes.
Good Rocket.
If you're comparing it to Avengers, they also feel more closer and more like a family than the Avengers ever got.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they know each other on so many levels.
Even just, and I know we want to move on, but like James got that opening scene of Guardians 3 where it's Rocket listening to Creep walking around nowhere, and it's just that scene is such a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It feels like they're in a physical space together.
Yes.
You understand what it gives you so much information, what the team is doing, where they are, what they're working on, what their day-to-day life has been like.
Yeah,
since
what state they're in, you know,
hanging out with them
without any words, picking up Quill and putting him to bed because you know what he's dealing with, you know what he's going through.
It's like it's beautifully
really
done. It's so clever and
Yeah.
thoughtful. It's real filmmaking as opposed to like I
Yes.
feel like sometimes these movies can be a little bit on autopilot.
I will say this: if we were able to include the Christmas special in there, this would probably be a higher ranking for me.
I love
That was a
that.
good
I
one.
love that.
That was a good one.
Great.
But Guardians is not my number 3, and I'm gonna make this quick. My list 3, 2, 1 now is like Lon said. It's just a matter of where is one thing ranking over the other because I love all 3 of these trilogies. I got MCU Spidey at number 3.
See, you weren't that different from me, Amaru. I'm proud of you.
Look, I'm with Lon. The difference between 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll say that 1, 2, 3, and 4. It was hard between Spidey and Dark Knight. I just like No Way Home way more. It's way more rewatchable to me than The Dark Knight is. Far From Home, I don't hate as much as you do. I do actually like Far From Home as a movie. I think Homecoming is amazing. I've always thought Homecoming was great. I've always thought that it just a great second introduction because of Civil War. An amazing villain. Again, Tom Holland is my Spider-Man named Peter Parker. The only thing bringing it down from the other two is Far From Home. That's really the reason why it is not vying for a spot for one of the top 2, and it was definitely number 3 for me. But I was the last one to give the number 3, so bringing that recap back, Jeannine, Lon, and Paige all had Raimi Spider-Man at number 3. I had the MCU Spider-Man at number 3, and Matt got rid of Guardians. So we are going to go to our bottom 2 and our top 2. But of course, please, before that, please visit bitesizebreakdown.com. We have a lot of great things going on. If you haven't seen it on the YouTube channel, we have our interview. Nick did an interview with Sean Gunn, speaking of Guardians Volume 3. That's on the channel right now. On the TV side, if you are not watching Blind Spotting, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life? The movie, the season 1, season 2, amazing television show. I just put a review out for that, bite-sized review. We also just got Little Mermaid review out today, so go check out what we thought of that. And our newest feature, One Miss Page for Betty, talking about the female gaze. It's the highly anticipated women movies from women directors coming out this coming year. So please go read up on all of that and go check us out on bitesizebreakdown.com. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into our bottom 2 apiece. And we're just going to do a quick rundown of why they're there. And for me, Spider-Man 2 is the most overrated comic book movie of all time. It's not even in top 15 for me. It is an amazing film, but that shit is boring. And X-Men, I absolutely love. Absolutely love. But it did look, these two, nostalgia is what holds them up compared to what's coming out now. And again, the train fight is amazing. It absolutely is. But damn it, it is nowhere near the best comic book movie of all time. But that's for me. Jeannine, you got Spidey and X-Men at 5 and 6.
Yes, I mean, I just feel like those first two movies in that Spider-Man trilogy just aren't very strong. There are elements in there that I think are great. I like the high school Peter Parker, like you guys talked about. But the second one is just not as strong. The only thing really holding that movie together for me is Jake Gyllenhaal just kind of going nuts and having fun. And I absolutely love that third movie. So that's what kept it out of last place. So just consistency again is my thing, and it was just not consistent throughout the three films. And then for X-Men, again with consistency. I mean, Matt talked about things, continuity not really working. I like Halle Berry changing up the accent and all these movies. She knew she couldn't do the African accent, so she gave it up by the second movie. And that terrible, the frog line we all just can't stand. But again, I love these movies. I mean, it speaks to, again, my nostalgia for early superhero films. But again, just not focusing on the X-Men as a whole for that first movie. Love the second film. But again, these movies didn't really take the time to focus on the whole team and really give everyone their moments. It was kind of just the Wolverine show the whole time. So that's what puts it in my last place. But I do still love this trilogy.
Yes. Lon,
I just
Jeremy
flipped
is wondering
right there.
What did Tom Holland do to all of you?
It's not personal about Tom Holland, although I do feel like at this point he's getting a little. He's got to at least get to start playing college students. At this point, the man is 35, and we still haven't playing teenagers. It's just not nice. Yeah, here, I mean, I think we've sort of been over a bunch of it. I think X-Men, I really do like those first two movies. I think that especially you've got to give it up to those guys for the casting. They brought in a lot of great people who were the perfect choices for a lot of these iconic roles. And, back in 2000, comic book franchises were not a sure thing. And I think that they showed us what the potential was. But like we were saying before, I don't feel like there's really any X-Men movie, even two, that is like my ideal X-Men movie.
Yeah, same.
Where it really feels like the cartoon.
You got what you
really
wanted.
Feels like the comics, right? Where it like opens with them. It's like a team on a mission. I still feel like we're kind of still missing that essential X-Men movie. And then the Tom Holland. I really love Keaton as the bad guy in that first movie. But otherwise, I feel like the MCU has just kind of given Spider-Man movies the short shrift in some ways. Like he doesn't really get to be his own character. He's kind of Tony Stark's protege for a long time. And then that third movie really feels like, it's like a tribute reunion special, a salute, ABC salutes Spider-Man or something like. It barely feels like a movie to me, really. I wanted to get emotionally involved, and it's really just like a highlight reel with applause breaks.
Man, yeah,
for me.
Paige, what the hell are you doing?
What the?
Oh my gosh!
Okay, this is so funny because I literally texted you about 10 minutes before this started, guys, and I had Capt at number 2. I had the Capt trilogy at number 2, and then I moved it down to 5 because I went for this. I'm going to talk about Capt before I talk about like the Spidey, because I kind of think we all hashed up that Tom Holland, like Spider-Man, like kind of why like we're not like, yes, I enjoy those films, but I don't go back to them. I also feel like the first two are kind of like pretty weak. They kind of mesh together. For me, Captain America, I just don't go back and like watch those movies. I love Civil War though. Don't get me wrong. That's definitely top 5 for me. But the other two, like, I couldn't really like. I get both of them mixed up. Like when I talk about them, like, wait, which one is First Avenger? Which one is Winter Soldier? Like, I don't know. Like, to me, I just went back on watchability. Which ones do I like want to like go and throw on and watch and like enjoy the most? And yeah, that one just doesn't do it for me. Fight me, guys. I'm sorry.
No, I
Evans is hot,
fully support
and
you.
he's from Boston. But other than that, some of his like, yes, I know he's a fucking 80-year-old man that was frozen, but some of the like dialogue within it makes me feel cringy a tiny bit.
And then Matt, you're with me. Raimi is not. You're with me exactly. X-Men is 5. Raimi is 6.
Yeah. I had to force myself to take nostalgia glasses off for this. We're at now with superhero films without these two franchises or without those two trilogies? No, we're not. However, the third movies are just really, really not that good. they did my Avi Arad did my boy Venom dirty. I hate the new Venom movies, but I actually will defend the Venom story in the trilogy for the original Spider-Man movies more than I will ever defend these two Venom movies because they completely massacred and ruined the characters that way. But they didn't do Dark Phoenix any justice in either attempt at it, but I had at least more fun with it in X3, so that's why I have that at number 5.
I like
Right,
the Venom movies too.
Oh, well, last but not least, we'll get to it. The numbers for number 1. 3 of us have Capt at the top spot, and 2 of us have the Dark Knight. And I'm wearing the fucking sweater. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get to this now.
I knew it.
We get to this
Nailed
now.
it.
1, Civil War. Why did Black Panther get into it? Because he thinks Bucky killed him. What is the big issue between the 2 warring factors? It's Cap trying to save Bucky. Why is Iron Man so pissed at the end? Because Bucky killed his parents. This movie, Civil War, is a Cap and Bucky movie with people all around fitting in a very, very good and blended way that connects to the MCU. But on top of that, Captain America Winter Soldier, it is the greatest comic book film ever made, point blank. Period. It is the first one that was able to make genre. You have Robert hot damn Redford in it. The elevator scene, the chase scene with Nick Fury, everything about that movie is amazing. It is the most rewatchable movie you could ever think of. And First Avenger is overhated. I'm done. It's Captain America all day. Not even a damn question.
Lon, let's say why we love The Dark Knight, because that is the best fucking comic book trilogy of all time.
It is not.
I mean,
critically
listen.
and audience wise, it 100% is. Like what Nolan was able to do, dude. No, what Nolan was able to do was take this different approach, kind of like we did already discuss a little bit of that. It is kind of like the real world Batman. Like, I appreciate that shit. The Dark Knight also is like one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, if not 1, 2. So
I think what Batman Begins that we haven't talked about too does so well is that it's one of the very few times too where you get, it's like it plays in different modes, just like comic books do. Like comic books aren't like this monolithic, like every comic book is a big city and there's a superhero on a rooftop watching crime, and like we get this one mode. But Batman Begins actually really goes and does like the adventure, like he goes on this trek to Asia, climbs a mountain, goes to a monastery. Like you get like this sort of epic scale, classic Hollywood like adventure story, but that then goes back to Gotham and becomes a Batman movie. And like the Nolan's ability to kind of do that, to take these big risks, to make these storytelling leaps. And I mean, some of them I don't love. Like we talked about, he makes that leap of like, we're going to go 8 years into the future and Bruce Wayne is broken and retired. Like, I don't always love those leaps, but the fact that he's making them in the context of this one trilogy, instead of constantly playing it safe, playing within the boundaries of this larger franchise, so you can't paint outside the lines too much. Like, that's what's so different about the Dark Knight movies. And I think that's what makes them kind of stand alone in comic book history and made them so influential. I don't think there's a more influential trilogy in terms of how we think about comic book movies now than Nolan. Like, he's the guy that came along and said, what if it wasn't just a silly comic book world for kids, but what if we took this world entirely seriously, like we do in movie dramas, and we set our comic book
so real
there and right. And I don't think you have the MCU today if Nolan doesn't do that in the mid-aughts.
I disagree because the MCU.
I
slightly disagree because the MCU kind of straddles the line between fantastical and realism. It does a great job of riding that border. Did Nolan help influence that? Yes, but they're still using that early 2000s type comic vibe, like the Raimi Spider-Man films, to help really guide it forward.
I don't know. I think if you go back and watch those now, today's comic book films have way more in common with Dark Knight.
No, I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying today's comic book films, especially if we're talking MCU, do a great job of straddling.
But when Raimi comes in and does his thing with Multiverse of Madness, everybody's like, what the hell is this?
Not me.
But come on, the average MCU fan rejected that because it was too stylized. Because what we've become is we've done the Nolan of making it de-stylized,
more grounded,
more like a grounded movie.
The MCU wish they had a movie like this within their trilogy.
They do. It's called
the
Captain
Winter
America
Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Called
Thank
Winter
you,
Soldier.
Amaru.
Yeah,
Thank
It's
you,
the one that
Amaru.
straddles that line perfectly. Look, Dark Knight.
It's the one that rips off Dark Knight the most. Yeah.
I will give you that. I will give you that. Dark Knight is really, really amazing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Captain
This
America Winter
trilogy
Soldier
came
actually made
first, so it
a
wins.
comic book movie on top of being that realistic and making it its own genre. It allowed the MCU to become
Dark Knight
a
was not a
genre
comic
movie. I consider Dark Knight a comic book movie. I consider it a comic book movie, but
Lon, you may see Star Wars and Marvel here. I'm first and foremost big DC guy. Grew up on the Bruce Timm stuff.
That's what.
Grew up in comic shops. Most of the comic books I own are DC.
No,
I hate what Nolan did to that universe. As I got older, when I was younger, loved it. Thought those films were the best things since sliced bread.
That's you.
I know. I'm just saying. But none of this is objective. I'm just saying this. In my opinion, I can't stand what he did, starting with Dark Knight, because I thought Batman Begins was stylized perfectly, a perfect blend of his world, realistic. It did what the Batman did. Is the Batman realistic and doesn't have the fantastical elements? Correct. But it still stays true to what Batman is. I don't feel that the Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Rises does that at all.
But how? Pick. Go.
See, Harley is saying that you're on track.
What is it doing that violates Batmanism for you?
So, to when I say this, Joker, love Joker. It's Gotham. Gotham is an important element to Batman. Period. To me,
okay.
Gotham felt like its own character in the first Nolan film. Gotham just feels like a bland ass city in the second and third ones.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, what changed about Gotham from the first to the second movie?
In the first one, it's dirty. It feels lived in. And then we go to Chicago and Pittsburgh. Funny enough, I am in the Dark Knight Rises. However,
well, yeah, the budget got bigger, because the movies were
budget
fantastic.
gets bigger,
that's
which
why.
means you should make Gotham more of a character itself. Gotham has always been a character in almost every single Batman property. Look at what Joel Schumacher did. Look at what Tim Burton did. Look at what Matt Reeves did.
But I'm trying I agree with you on that. Yeah. I'm just trying to pick apart what in the Nolan films violates that, because I can't tell.
It doesn't feel like a Gotham City. It just feels like a normal.
Okay, so it's the city looking too much like a 2020.
It doesn't even feel. It doesn't even feel like a city where everything's in danger.
I don't 100% agree with you. It makes it not Batman, but I do, thinking about it, especially with that last act in Batman Begins, I do feel Gotham a little bit more in Batman Begins than 1 and 2. Jeannine, you also have Capt, though. Why do you have Capt over Dark Knight?
Again, my consistency argument. Consistently, all great films. Yes. They all try to do something different. So you're doing something fresh in each movie. You're getting something different from each movie. And you are following that core story of Cap and Bucky. Like, that is a consistent thing that ties all these movies together. So even though there's a lot going on in Civil War, Cap, there are moments where, he does get a little bit sidelined, but you always go back to that core of his relationship with Bucky and him trying to save his friend and that whole situation. And it builds to this crazy big movie. So I like that each film does more each time. And yeah, just consistency of solid films that definitely hit on different genres. And I thought that was so smart.
That is why I ultimately put it in my top as my number one. I don't like Civil War as much. Like I said, it's a love-hate relationship, but it's still there's not a miss. It's not like Civil War is one of the worst MCU movies ever. It is still probably top 15 MCU film. And when you boil it down to that, that's just consistency across the board. Whoever thought Joe Johnston would make a great movie? Let's be honest.
Yes.
The first Avengers is a really good movie. Joe Johnston does not have a good track record.
He has not seen the Rocketeer screw off.
Okay. Okay, that's one. Look at all of his other
Jumanji? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. This kid
he directed a lot of the action sequences from The Lost World, because Spielberg was busy doing.
You just said one of the worst Jurassic Park movies ever.
No, I'm not saying it's like a mark. I'm just saying that it's interesting that that's a Joe Johnston credit. Not
Matt,
Mighty Joe Young, folks.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt, you also had, even though you're talking about it, you had Dark Knight as your number 2. So give up your final thoughts about why Cap won Dark Knight 2 in this list in general.
Realistically, when it came down to this, did I have Dark Knight at number 2? Yes, and that's boils down to the same reason I put Cap as 1, consistency. However, Rise is a much worse film than Civil War to me. It really is. And like I said, I do have a little bit of bias that I am in the stadium scene.
Oh, okay.
I'm one of the extras in the stadium scene, so I know I'm in there. I might not even be on camera, but I'm in the actual movie. So
You were
that's
there.
all that matters.
So you died. So you died. Beautiful. Paige, you ended up.
Hey! I wasn't on the field. I was in the stands. The stands were safe for the most.
Yeah, people.
They were
people
safe.
They
They were
escaped
safe.
from the stands.
There you go. They did. Paige, you also had Guardians at number 2. So give us your final thoughts on why Dark Knight's 1, Guardians 2, and the list as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I chose Dark Knight. Like, I think consistency, like, I think that is the best, like, comic book trilogy. It does something different. It's kind of like a nuance to it in a sense. And Guardians is number 2 for me, just because, like, recency bias. I can't put that at number 1 because it just came out. I need it to resonate. I need the third film to resonate with me more to see where it could stand in maybe a couple years. But, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love those films. Guardians Volume 1 is my favorite MCU film, but yeah, recency bias. I can't just be like, yep, that it's the best comic book trilogy of all time because it just came out. Like, it could change in 5 years, but right now it is not. Dark Knight all day, every day. Love Batman because he's vengeance. And yes.
Jeannine, a lot of us actually had Guardians at number 2.
Number
You have
2.
Guardians 2, Cap number 1. Give us your final thoughts on the list in general and why you have Cap in Guardians 1 and 2.
Well, Guardians, I think, we hit on a lot of the great things. I think it's very consistent. All the movies are good. I don't think there's one bad movie. While 2 is the weakest, I still don't think it's a bad movie. The very purposeful needle drops adding to the story of the film, the relationship between these characters feeling very real. So despite all the jokiness, you still feel like they're a family, that they know each other really well, they get each other. The fact that I'm able to care about these random ass characters I had never heard of. And they're just a lot of fun. And like you said, like the space world that they're in feels very real. Like it doesn't feel like a bunch of green screen nonsense. Everything feels pretty tangible in those movies. So yeah, definitely my number 2 for Guardians. And yeah, Captain America, just very well made movies, fun, each one different. And yeah, I hated putting X-Men last because just nostalgia. I absolutely love it, but just not consistently good.
I honestly thought X-Men was going to be your number 1. And I was really wrong.
It's my number 1 in terms of comic book characters, but those movies yeah.
Lon, you also had Guardians at number 2. Yeah, Dark Knight at number 1. Give us your final thoughts on the list in general and why you have what you got.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Dark Knight, it's the one where individually looking at all 3 movies, they're movies I would go back and rewatch probably the most. They're some of the ones that I think work the longest term. They're the most compelling to me. And I think even Rises, which he sets up some real challenges for himself at the very beginning that I don't know why he felt the need to do that, but I think he still gets a pretty good above average comic book movie out of it. Which is, all the more impressive in some ways. And Guardians, I just kind of feel like James Gunn's voice and the MCU house style, those mesh together so beautifully well. They're just so complementary. His ability to write kind of funny, bantery dialogue that still feels like you get who that person is and they have heart. It doesn't feel like they're just a quit machine. Like, I feel like that can happen a lot where And I like Fletch, the Chevy Chase Fletch movie or whatever. But you don't want characters who aren't in a Fletch movie to feel like Fletch, where they're just constantly going through, not taking their own movie seriously and making wisecracks about it. I feel like that works for Chevy Chase, maybe Ryan Reynolds. Most people cannot pull that off. And I feel like a lot of MCU movies, you get that phony, quippy, everybody's kind of like Thor. We talked about beat up on Love and Thunder, but that's what it feels like. It feels like there's a movie happening, but we're almost getting the Mystery Science Theater version where there's a bunch of quippy people being like, this is the movie to us. And I'm like, no, leave me out of it. You do the movie. And I feel like James Gunn is so good at that, where it's fun, it's quippy, it's fast paced, it's funny, but it holds together. You care about it. You invest in it like it's real. And I think that's what is that perfect MCU sort of balance that he manages to hit. And then, yeah, my last two, I had X-Men, which I feel like great moments, some individual really good movies, but it never kind of found its stride and its rhythm as a franchise. And then last, the MCU Spider-Man. Again, lots of stuff I like from the individual movies, but I feel like being in the MCU has not done Spider-Man any favors. Also having Spider-Verse happening simultaneously, the far superior take is also not doing them any favors.
Yes. Speaking of Guardians, couple lists in the chat. Dan has Guardians as number 1. Maybe Volume 3 hit him as much as I did. Andy has Cap and then Dark Knight. No love for Raimi going around, as Raimi is 6 or 5 in all 3 of them with the Dark Knight. But MCU Spider-Man number 2 for Jeremy. But with that, Matt, let the people know where they can find you. Anything you got going on coming up?
So if most people on here know, because I've been on here a million times by now, Watt Real Entertainment, WAT Real Entertainment, and then on Twitch, Watt Real Ent. Taylor Cleek and I and a couple of our partners have been doing a lot of gaming streams there, including for Taylor a WWE 2K League, which you could see Rue and Paige on. I've been doing a Watt Basketball 2K League, which you can see Rue on. Once the men have run their course, I'm going to do the women's league also. So you'll probably end up seeing Paige and Jeannine on there because we make all of our Schmoedown adjacent Schmoedown people for this stuff. Rue's lost to my team in the championship like 4 straight times, which has been great because the Knicks suck.
Like the Caps.
And then this week I have reviews for Spider-Verse dropping on Wednesday, and then the Peacock original film Shooting Stars, a biopic about LeBron James. Hold up. Oh, my book's over there for my notes. That's based on the memoir he wrote with Buzz Bissinger that came out in the late 2000s. So be sure to check that out. And then next Sunday, Paige and I are back with Jeff Alterman for the HB Hose over on Watt Real Entertainment, where we're going to be discussing the final season of Succession. And then I think a week or so after that, we're planning on doing an entire Barry review since Paige finally hopped on that train also. So, yeah, a lot going on.
All right. Thank you. Lon, let the people know where they can find you, what you got going on. Thank you so much for hopping on with us.
Yeah.
It's been amazing, sir.
My pleasure. You can find me on Twitter at LONS. That's the best place to keep up with everything I'm doing. And you can also listen to my podcast with Hal Rudnick. It's called Binge Boys. We just watch a bunch of stuff on streaming, and then I yell at Hal about why his opinions are wrong. That's on wherever you listen to your podcast. You can probably find that.
Beautiful. And last but not least, thank you so much, Jeannine. Jeannine, let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me at Jeannine Devine _ on Twitter, Jeannine Devine on Instagram and TikTok. Check out the It's a Wonderful podcast feed. We have our shows over there. Our Wednesday show, Morgan Hasn't Seen, where I force my co-host Morgan to watch things he hasn't seen. All June, we are going to have some fun in honor of The Flash. We are talking some fringe DC movies. So we're going to talk about Catwoman and the Green Lantern and Constantine.
Please tell me Steel is on that list.
Steel is the first movie.
Yes!
Coming out that first week of June. So it's going to be a fun series. And then our Classic Films podcast every Friday. It's a Wonderful Podcast, where we give love to classic movies. And then our show on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel, Monday Madness. We talk movie news, trailers, give movie reviews, whatever fun movie topics, and then we play some fun and movie related games. So that's every Monday. We also do a bunch of fun stuff on the channel, watch alongs. My co-host, he collects physical media, so he likes to do physical media haul videos, all kinds of fun stuff on the It's Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. So check out the YouTube channel and the podcast feed.
Thank you all so much, very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a great show. But as always, at the end of every episode, I got to give you the riddle for next episode. So the next episode of One Gotta Stay, it's tournament season, folks. But this time it's just going to be for the summer. I'm too old for this year-long shit. I'm not jumping off that roof again. And with this one's going to draw blood. Now, who draws first blood? I don't know. I do know it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. So get ready to shake hands with friends and get in the mud with your enemies. Ball up those fists, whether it's with your fingers or with your toes. Because with only one character coming out of this battle, it may feel like you've been thrown out of a window or thrown around in the back of a truck or thrown for a loop on top of a carnival ride. But if it gets to that point, You're going to have to throw a full court haymaker to survive this game of death because only one character is getting out of here. And if it ain't your favorite, they're going to have to get up out of here. With that, for Paige, for Jeannine, for Matt, and for Lon, we are out of here.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.